Okay, well, I'm going to share a book with you that that was read to me when I was a boy. In fact, this book was written in 1965, 5 years before I was born. And I don't exactly remember a teacher reading it to me, but it seems like one did. I'm not sure who that would have been, but I'm sure a teacher, probably in third or fourth grade. So, and it was written by Beverly Cleary. And the title is The Mouse and the Motorcycle. The Mouse and the Motorcycle. Now, the back part always kind of tells you a little bit of what it's about. So let me read that. The Mouse and the Motorcycle. When Keith and his parents step into room 215 of the Mountain View Inn, they don't know they are being watched, but a mouse named Ralph is studying them from a knothole near the floor. And as soon as Ralph spots Keith's toy motorcycle, he knows he will have to investigate. That motorcycle seems to be the perfect size for a daring young mouse to ride. After a harrowing introduction, kept secret from Keith's mother, the mouse and the boy become fast friends. Of course, they understand each other. Two creatures who share a love for motorcycles naturally speak the same language. From then on, the toy cycle means noise, speed, fun, and trouble for Ralph and Keith. Let's see what happens. The first chapter is called The New Guest. Well, I don't know if it was still recording, but the video shut down for a second. Okay, so hopefully it's still recording here. The New Guest. Chapter 1. And here you can see a picture. That's a mouse looking through a knothole on the floor. And see, if you see, he's looking through the hole and he sees, I think he sees a boy or maybe his mom. Yep, looks like a boy. Keith, the boy in the rumpled shorts and shirt, did not know he was being watched as he entered room 215 of the Mountain View Inn. An inn is kind of like a hotel. Neither did his mother and father, who both looked hot and tired. They had come from Ohio and for 5 days had driven across plains and deserts and over mountains to the old hotel in the California foothills, 25 miles from Highway 40. The fourth person entering room 215 may have known he was being watched, but he did not care. He was Matt, 60 if he was a day, who at the moment was the bellboy. Bellboy are people at hotels and inns who, when you're going to your room, they grab your suitcases and they take them to the room for you and they open the door for you. So he was the bellboy, Matt. But he's not a boy. It says he was at least 60. Matt also replaced worn-out light bulbs, renewed washers and leaky faucets, carried trays for people who telephoned room service to order food sent to their rooms, and sometimes prevented children from hitting one another with croquet mallets on the lawn behind the hotel. Now Matt's right shoulder sagged with the weight of one of the bags he was carrying. "Here you are, Mr. Gridley, rooms 215 and 216, he said, setting the smaller of the bags on a luggage rack at the foot of the double bed before he opened a door into the next room. "I expect you and Mrs. Gridley will want room 216. It is a corner room with twin beds and a private bath." He carried the heavy bag into the next room where he could be heard opening windows. Outside, a chipmunk chattered in a pine tree, and chipmunks and a chickadee whistled. The boy's mother looked critically around room 215 and whispered, "I think we should drive back to the main highway. There must be a hotel with a vacancy sign someplace. We didn't look long enough." You know what that tells me? They must have been looking for a hotel before they stopped there, and apparently Mom doesn't really like it. "Not another mile," answered Father. "I'm not driving another mile on a California highway on a holiday weekend. Did you see the way that truck almost forced us off the road?" "Dad, did you see those two fellows on motorcycles?" began the boy, and stopped, realizing he should not interrupt an argument. "But this place is so old," protested the boy's mother. Oh, I should say, read it a different way. "But this place is so old," protested the boy's mother. "And we have only 3 weeks for our whole trip. We had planned to spend the 4th of July weekend in San Francisco, and we wanted to show Keith as much of the United States as we could." "San Francisco will have to wait, and this is part of the United States. Besides, this used to be a very fashionable hotel," said Mr. Gridley. "People came from miles around." "50 years ago," said Mrs. Gridley, "and they came by horse and buggy." The bellboy returned to room 215. "The dining room opens at 6:30, sir. There is ping-pong in the game room, TV in the lobby, and croquet on the back lawn. I'm sure you will be very comfortable." Matt, who had seen guests come and go for many years, knew there were two kinds: those who thought the hotel was a dreadful old barn of a place, and those who thought it charming and quaint, so quiet and restful. "Of course we will be comfortable," said Mr. Gridley, dropping some coins into Matt's hand for carrying the bags. "But this big hotel is positively spooky," Mrs. Gridley made one last protest. "It is probably full of mice." Matt opened the window wide. "Mice? Oh, no, ma'am. The management wouldn't stand for the mice." "I wouldn't mind a few mice," the boy said, as he looked around the room at the high ceiling, the knotty pine walls, the carpet so threadbare that many of its roses had almost entirely faded, and one chair with the antimacassar on its back, the wash basin and towel racks at the corner of the room. An antimacassar is like it's kind of like something you put on the back of a chair or sofa to give it decoration. That's what someone told me recently. "I like it here," he announced. That's the boy. "A whole room to myself. Usually I just get a cot in the corner of a motel room." His mother smiled, relenting. Like, oh, great. Relenting. That means just like, oh, kind of, okay. Then she turned to Matt. "I'm sorry. It's just that it was so hot across Nevada, and we are not used to mountain driving. Back on the highway, the traffic was bumper to bumper. I'm sure we shall be very comfortable." After Matt had gone, closing the door behind him, Mr. Gridley said, "I need a rest before dinner. 400 miles of driving in that mountain traffic. It was too much." "And if we are going to stay for a weekend, I had better unpack," said Mrs. Gridley. "At least I'll have a chance to do some drip drying." Drip drying, maybe she's sweaty. Alone in room 215 and unaware that he was being watched, the boy began to explore. He got down on his hands and knees and looked under the bed. He leaned out the open window as far as he could and greedily inhaled deep breaths of pine-scented air. He turned the hot and cold water on and off in the wash basin and slipped one of the small bars of paper-wrapped soap into his pocket. Under the window he discovered a knothole in the pine wall down by the floor, and squatting, poked his finger into the hole. Crazy. When he felt nothing inside, he lost interest. Look at that boy. Here he is looking at the hole, and it says he put his finger in it. What a bobo. Now, Next, Keith opened his suitcase. So that's the boy's name, Keith. He opened his suitcase and took out an apple and several small cars, a sedan, a sports car, and an ambulance about 6 inches long, and a red motorcycle half the length of the cars, which he dropped on the striped bedspread before he bit into the apple. He ate the apple noisily in big chomping bites, and then laid the core on the bedside table between the lamp and the telephone. The core of an apple, that's what you have left over when you're finished eating. That's the middle part. And it says he laid the core on the bedside table between the lamp and the telephone. Keith began to play, running his cars up and down the bedspread, pretending that the stripes on the spread were highways and making noises with his mouth. Vroom, vroom for the sports car. Wee, wee, wee for the ambulance. And for the motorcycle up and down the stripes. Once Keith stopped suddenly and looked quickly around the room as if he expected to see something or someone. But when he saw nothing unusual, he returned to his cars. He must have felt like maybe something was looking at him, probably the mouse. Vroom, vroom, bang! The sports car hit the sedan and rolled over off the highway strap. The motorcycle came roaring to the scene of the crash. "Keith," his mother called from the next room. "Time to get washed for dinner." "Okay." Keith parked his cars in a straight line on the bedside table beside the telephone, where they looked like a row of real cars, only much, much smaller. The first thing Mrs. Gridley noticed when she and Mr. Gridley came into the room was the apple core on the table. She dropped it with a thunk into the metal basket beside the table as she gave several quick little sniffs of the air and said, looking perplexed, "I don't care what the bellboy said. I'm sure this hotel has mice." And Keith said, "I hope so." I guess Keith, well, he wants to play with mice, I guess. I don't know. And here's a picture of the mice, I guess, playing when Keith wasn't paying attention. The mouse. Here's a picture of the mouse as he was playing when Keith was not looking. The next chapter is called The Motorcycle. But that's for tomorrow. Have a nice day.